them with the UN Environment Secretariat so they can be visible to all and used in the drafting process. I invite you in today's session to give your comments that will then be compiled in a summary prepared by the Secretariat, which will be transmitted to the President of the UN Environment Assembly in the form of a summary to be included in the report of the Second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific. Your inputs will be helpful in developing the next version of the outcome document, which will be released on the 13th of September. I trust in this regard that all of you have had the opportunity to review the zero draft of the ministerial outcome document, which was sent out well in advance of this meeting. Finally, let me reassure you that informal consultations will take place on 4th and 31st October in Nairobi and will guide the drafting process with the release of a preliminary draft, which is to be done on September 13th, and a final draft on October 20th. It is our aim to adopt the document during UNEA 3. The floor is open.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Raza Bashir Tar. And the first intervention that I have is from Singapore. Singapore, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, we'll intervene later on. Thank you.
So the floor is open for any. I think we can start with the civil society. It's the social community enterprise. Maldives? Okay. So, Maldives, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the Secretariat for the presentations in the morning, as well as the representative from the Committee of Permanent Representatives for the presentation just now. Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I would also like to touch on the agenda items that was discussed earlier in the morning. Mr. Chair, UN Environment has been instrumental in addressing environmental challenges, issues at the global level, and has assisted my country as well as many others to tackle these at the national level. This year's theme for the UNEA is indeed highly pertinent issue. In terms of air pollution in our capital in the Maldives, PM 2.5 is estimated to be about 10% more than the safe levels recommended by WHO. An estimated 48 people die from air pollution-related illnesses every year in the Maldives, and this is a significant number given our small population. Air pollution has indeed become a pronounced issue in the world today. As such, we echo what the distinguished representative from Republic of Korea expressed earlier in the morning in terms of UN Environment being more proactive in tackling the issue of air pollution. Mr. Chair, we are also happy to report that Maldives is in the progress of ratifying the Minamata Convention. In this regard, we are working with UN Environment in conducting an initial assessment that will feed into the national ratification process. We are also taking further steps in reducing ocean plastics and microplastics. Maldives has in fact made a voluntary commitment at the Oceans Conference held last June to this very regard. We are now in the process of institutionalizing policies at the national level to address this issue. Lastly, I would like to note our support for the proposed resolutions at UNEA 3, particularly on pollution and the environment and health nexus, as well as the ministerial outcome document proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Maldives. Do we have any other state parties who wish to take the floor? If not, then I would like to invite the intervention from Social Community Enterprise, from Dompet, Duwata in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are Social Community Enterprise constituent of the Asian Pacific Region CSO Management Mechanism of RCEM, met the Asian Pacific Minister Summit on Environment and individually as a social community enterprise at Dompet Duwata, Indonesia. This is the following statement. We are very pleased Ministerial Declaration more responsive to key challenges to support green growth and inclusive development in Asia Pacific. Social community enterprise engage the poor and marginalized worker, client, supplier, and enterprise owner as partner in enterprise and value chain management. Mr. Chair, we urge to develop sustainable livelihood correlation with the United Nations Secretary General System report in this regarding needed concrete resolution on sustainable practice on sustainable livelihood in parts 18 and E and F as a framework in building ethical market, strong social economic resilience, support to environment integration. In order to become significant transformational partner of civil society, government, and business institutions, empowering the poor and small producer as stakeholder and equitable. We recommended for the review of progress to be aligned with SDGs, especially goal number 1, 9, 13, and 14, and 15, especially relevant to target and social enterprise impacts indicators. On this agenda, I would like to emphasize and ask the government continually push promotion of renewable energy and sustainable waste management system, developing new products and services that serve to rehabilitate the environment, encourage protection of diversity-friendly and contribute to the conservation, protection, and rehabilitation of environment. It needs specific policy to protect the environment and natural resources that, in fact, to human being and welfare, social community, and enterprise. The last, we ask the government urge to promote better livelihood system that adhere to sustainable protection and consumption pattern. It's promote the development of value chains, links to the promotion of sustainable agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and creative economic of small enterprises. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any other interventions with regard to item 8C? I see none. Going. We can end the session in case there are, Indonesia, would you like to have, Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me another floor, and thank you for briefing us on the stage of the development of the draft declaration of UNEA 3. As I mentioned before in my intervention under agenda item 7 and the previous agenda item of 8A and B, that UNEA is the pertinent forum to address the global environmental affairs. So as part of our preparation for the successful and fruitful session 3 of the UNEA, allow me to share the following views. As we already mentioned that tackling the environmental issue cannot be separate from number of important factors. So I would like to, and my delegation would like to have the declaration to also recognize other issues such as the commitment, multi-layer partnership, collaboration at all levels within regions and among regions, good governance, and robust approach, not only technology, but as well as the economic and financing instrument. And Indonesia is very willing to share its experiences in developing the economic instrument in managing the environment. And we also would like to underline that we need to continue recognize the importance of traditional knowledge and participations of multi-stakeholders in ensuring that we may able to implement the agenda towards a pollution-free planet. And as we also know that there are other platform and agenda at the global as well as the regional levels in addressing this a similar issue. So, therefore, my delegation would like to have the UNEA to be a platform to synergize and harmonize, as well as to strong collaborations among the current and the future initiative on this agenda. And it is also necessary to recognize the national circumstances and priorities. We all know that dealing with environment is very time specific, geographical specific, and social condition specific. So capacities, capabilities, and the level of development in implementation the agenda towards the pollution-free planet is very essential. Therefore, the UN environment it's strongly encouraged to play a very important role in having stronger collaborations among countries, among regions, and among UN agencies as well. And lastly, we will continue to engage the process of the development of the outcome documents, including through our CPR in Nairobi. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you much. China, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, delegations. With regard to the current agenda item, zero draft of the declaration for Union 3. When I look at it, I would like to share some of my views with our delegates. The current format is a little bit different to what we have seen in many similar declarations. In that point, that the first paragraph, this is the beginning of the statement. From the text, we understand this is in the text. It picked up several individual cases that we are facing in different regions. Whether this is a good format or not, this is something I'm not sure. Normally, when we look at the social statement, the first paragraph reviews what we have done, the progress we have made, and then we can point out that we are still facing a lot of challenges, then followed by we are going to take actions to tackle those challenges. However, by reading this text, it gives us some negative message. So I would like the drafting team to reconsider whether this is a good format or not. This is one view. Second view is that in the multilateral forum for environment and development, there are several important principles which will always be there. But at this time, I don't find them. I would like to also ask the draft team to consider it again, to put it in the text. I would like to mention two important considerations or concerns from the developing countries. Asia Pacific is the members here. Most of our members are developing countries. So the first principle is common but differentiated responsibilities should be there. Second one is the financial assistance or financial aid or financial support, something like that. And the technology transfer, technology aspects also must be there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China. We have got 3 interventions from the NGOs. I think it's women first, then the NGOs. I think we have got 3. So beginning from the right, we'll take, I think, is it the women first? The UN women?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Women's Constituency at the Asia-Pacific Regional Civil Society Engagement Mechanism. We appreciate the space given to CSOs and the chance to provide a regional perspective for UNEA 3 and support the transparency of the process. In Asia-Pacific, interlinked systemic barriers are blocking the achievement of just and sustainable development and the creation of a pollution-free environment. We are particularly concerned about the effects of patriarchy, fundamentalism, and authoritarian governance, which are currently undergoing a resurgence in this region. We wish to commend UNE for its comprehensive and timely report for a pollution-free planet. Pollution has already caused an unprecedented number of deaths in our region and has harmful effects on pregnancy outcomes, fertility, fetal health, amongst others. However, we feel the report lacks a deeper analysis of the feminization of pollution and how it impacts various marginalized groups. Women and men's health is affected differently by pollution. Women commonly face higher risks and greater burdens, with the majority of the region's poor being women. Their unequal participation in decision-making processes and labor markets compound inequalities and often prevent women from fully contributing to the policy making, and implementation. Other marginalized groups, such as people living with HIV, LGBTIQ, sex workers, people who use drugs, and migrants are particularly vulnerable due to intersecting forms of discrimination. Honorable delegates, the planet cannot be pollution-free if half of women and girls remain undernourished, face routine violence and discrimination, lack power to take decisions at multiple levels, and lack equal opportunities for employment and political representation. Achieving gender equality and fulfilling the human rights of women and girls is a crucial step to sustainable development and sustainable resource use. This includes ensuring that women and girls are empowered and able to make fully informed choices and decisions about their sexual and reproductive health and rights. In this vein, we encourage stronger linkages with the International Conference on Population and Development Programme for Action and related processes. To close, we underscore the call for a development justice framework to tackle the rising and pervasive inequalities in the region and to support the existence of powerful, resourced, connected women's rights movements and other social movements. Thank you.
Thank you. There's an intervention from the NGOs. Please identify yourself also because we cannot read your sign from here.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Pratibha Kaleb from Development Alternatives and will be giving the collective statement on behalf of the CSOs. We welcome the continuous efforts to address specific issues that are significant to the Asia-Pacific region into the resolutions adopted by the United Nations Environment Assembly. In terms of process, we have very high expectations that UNEA and associate regional processes will provide meaningful opportunities for CSOs to substantively engage with the governments, such as through representation in these panels or in official programs. This being said, greater care needs to be taken in ensuring that the progress of the resolutions are aligned with the efforts already made by countries to transition towards more sustainable economies. A case in point is the resolution made in UNEA 2, which states its commitment to contributing to the effective implementation of the environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in an integrated manner. This, however, is restricted to only supporting the 2030 Agenda through providing overarching policy guidance and fostering of partnerships for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The identification of appropriate indicators and the means for measuring progress of sustainable development was a rigorous task undertaken by the Independent Experts Advisory Group for development of global indicators and targets. Countries are exerting efforts to align the global SDG indicators to indicators that can be measured at the national level, as well as identification in gaps in data that need to be filled by collection of new data sets, as well as innovative methodologies for credible data collection. To optimize these efforts and resources, we call for alignment of the review of implementation of the UNEA and MECD resolutions with the tools, indicators, and review framework already adopted under the SDGs. For example, the implementation of UNEA 2 resolution on prevention, reduction, and reuse of food waste should be reviewed using the relevant indicator existing under SDG 12.3, which can be measured through the Global Food Loss Index. This would make it easier for countries to assess certain data gaps and review and report on their progress. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Development Alternatives. I think the Vice Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives of UN Environment, His Excellency Raza Bashir Tar, would like to respond to this. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Chairman, if you allow me, I can also say a word or two about the other interventions that we have heard. Now, China has made a very fair point, and certainly as an individual delegation, our sense was the same, that CBDR and financial and assistance and technology transfer should not be excluded. What I would respectfully urge is for you to, obviously you don't have to come up with something immediately, but whatever drafting suggestion you have, kindly convey it officially to the Secretariat so that they can then transfer it in a collective form to Nairobi. That will really facilitate our task. You have a very active delegation here, so I don't think there should be any problem. But thank you very much for making this point. Regarding the point made by Indonesia, certainly, I mean, this is a point very well taken. But if you permit me to say so, Madam, I think a clear drafting suggestion would be very helpful. So I'm sure your input would find its way into the document. That will really make life easier. Then the point just made by the development alternatives on behalf of the civil society organizations. Madam, this is certainly an extremely pertinent a point, or points rather, that you have made. And a word of caution, I mean, the declaration is more kind of aspirational, and I do certainly take my hat off to you for your in-depth, analysis down to the nitty-gritty of the pertinent goals. So certainly your input would be extremely useful. Now, what I would like to urge you is that, and this is something that one observed in UNEA 2 also. So in order not to have like a rerun of that, what happens is that this time UNEA 3 is like, first of all, it is being held as an extraordinary event, essentially to sort of correct the cycle of these meetings. And hence, not too many resolutions have emerged because people have a certain sense of resignation that maybe the event is coming, too quickly. And that is why the idea that we should restrict ourselves to pollution. Now, if the civil society, I don't want to patronize the civil society. You're a very, important pillar of the whole thing. But the idea is that it's essentially an intergovernmental process. And if you choose to save it for the last, when you actually come to Nairobi, then there might not be enough time. So what I would urge is that whatever you can give a paper or you can give drafting suggestions or whatever, and please forward it well ahead of time so that, and people can then, decide whether it can be done or not. We have extremely, talented luminaries like the director here, who can then educate us whether it is doable, not doable, whether it is to be done by UNDP or some other agency or whatever. Alignment, yes, is a very critical issue, and alignment is an Achilles heel of frankly, the whole UN system. And, but certainly, suggestions would be welcome. And in that, I would also urge you to share with us success stories, of things that have actually been done, so that it does not remain just prescriptive and can go into the, the realm of the practical. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Excellency Raza Bashir Tar Saab. Do we take them first, or we actually? We have had two flags up almost since the morning. So we'll take the one in the middle here first, and then we go to the farmers, followed by Republic of Korea then. Introduce yourself as we... Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Myself is Daksha Waja, representing on behalf of the Science and Technology community of RCM. We raise our concerns for the review of implementation at UNEA 2, and this is for Agenda 7. What we want to highlight is in terms of technology, despite some countries in the region being global technology leaders, on the Global Innovation Index, more than a quarter of the countries ranking in the lowest 10% are from Asia Pacific. Many of the countries suffer from severe capacity gaps and will require substantial investment in institutional capacity, as well as capacity for data collection and monitoring and development of indigenous and endogenous technologies. Partnerships with technology developers and innovators in the private sector, including social enterprises, in a manner that clearly defines their roles and responsibilities in addressing pollution to serve people's interests and protect the planet, rather than placing undue faith on their capacity to mobilize resources. In accordance with the precautionary principle of Agenda 21, we urge member states and the UN to conduct studies looking at the potential opportunities and consequences on the environment, livelihoods, and inequality of new and emerging technologies that may be relevant to resource efficiencies and addressing pollution, sustainable consumption, food waste, marine pollution, and microplastics that are covered in UNIA 2 resolutions, such as blockchain technologies, synthetic biology, gene editing, robotics, and others that drive the so-called fourth industrial revolution. Concerns that while the potential and consequences of this technology may be disruptive and transformative, they will increase energy use and could have impacts on the achievements of other SDGs and the 230 agenda in general. A comprehensive and anticipatory research on these issues and concerns on new and emerging technologies merit serious attention, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The farmers, I think it's Roots for Equity. We'll take you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me assure my colleague from Pakistan, Mr. Tara, that the civil society will give you enough input and thoughts on the UNIA 3 process. My input is on the Agenda 8. I am Wali Haider from Roots for Equity, Pakistan, on behalf of Farmers Constituency on Asia-Pacific CSO Engagement Mechanism, which is APRSEM. While we approach the space for intervention given to, while we appreciate the space for interventions given to CSOs, we also want to mention here that we feel excluded to see no civil society being included in any of today's agenda and days to come. We believe that genuine inclusive participation of CSO is necessary for the spirit of partnership and Agenda 2030 puts so much emphasis on. We believe our input would be critical to the discussion in these meetings. We emphasize that we need to look at pollution in a broader sense, which also includes genetic pollution and pollution from the use of pesticides and fertilizers. The new liberal era has brought this planet beyond the threshold of ecological limits due to the development model based on over-dependence on fossil fuels, extraction of mineral resources and concentration of wealth, power in fewer people and TNCs. The commodification of natural resources, particularly seeds, by the agrochemical and GM corporations, through dispossession of local communities' right to access and control over their local and indigenous seeds. New emerging phenomena of the land grabbing by investor is also causing issues for environmental crisis and livelihood issues. The land is often used for the expansion of export crops and are dependent on chemical input as well as the production of agrofuels, which creates unhealthy competition with food production and severely restrict poor people's access to land and food. We would like to suggest government ensure strong policies for an implementation of agroecology as well as support for small and landless farmers movement that are advancing the framework of food sovereignty. These farmers and small food producers are contributing to safe and nutritious food, to healthy soil, water, air and environment, as well as contributing to adoption of climate change. We demand for development justice so that the inequities, particularly for small producers, can be removed from our society. For this, we need redistributive justice, ecological justice, and accountability to the people. If we really want pollution-free world, we must get rid of structural barriers and we must hear the voices for the marginalized communities, which include small and landless farmers, fisherfolk, indigenous communities, among others. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, farmers. Now we'll have Republic of Korea first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies for taking the floor this late. For your information, my English is my fourth language, by the way. And, my delegation shares the similar view as the distinguished delegate from China pointed out. The format of the declaration looks pretty unusual and creative and unique. I suggest that the declaration should start from paragraph 2 of the zero draft. I'm not quite sure about the first paragraph, but I suggest to add the text noting that at the beginning. Nevertheless, I believe that the zero draft is a good starting point for the discussion in Nairobi. Certainly my delegation will provide an input to the draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. Next, we have got Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the UNIA 3 declaration, in terms of the format, Japan thinks that the chair's summary is more desirable than a negotiated outcome document such as a declaration in order to have realistic, concise, well-focused, and action-oriented output. We have to learn a lesson from UNIA 2, where we could not reach an agreement on high-level document among member countries, and also the UNIA 3 session is only 3 days. In addition, we believe that the contents of the document needs to be reviewed, especially in paragraph 1, paragraph 3, and paragraph 5, since it seems that these paragraphs contain some unevidenced figures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Japan, for your powerful interventions. It's so powerful that the Vice Chair would like to respond immediately.
Thank you very much. I mean, without prejudice to what Japan has said, this was initially like, I wouldn't say point of contention, but we had, various inputs. And initially, some delegations were of the view that to have a chair summary would be good. But then the rationale, and this is what I would respectfully submit to this August gathering, the rationale basically is that since it's supposed to be an aspirational document, it is important to at least, spell out the principles and the aspirations. And then also let me share with you, at the risk of offending the president of UNEA, he is a progressive man, and he said that I want a document which even my grandmother and my grandchild can understand. I'm kind of paraphrasing him, but the idea is that it should not be too bureaucratic and kind of opaque, and the man on the street should be able to understand it. So that is the rationale, basically. It does not give any cut and dry targets. It has no ODA implication, because that is usually the concern. It is not asking people to, produce certain unspecified sums for some vague goals. But it's an aspirational document. So if we just go by the chair's summary, then frankly, UNEA 3 may appear rather disappointing at the end of the day. So this is the thought I want to leave with you, obviously without prejudice to your eventual position on this. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, yeah, we will take Iran first, but although English is my second language, but my friend here has used aspirational so many times that I don't know whether aspirational means unrealizable or not. Now, my next intervention is from Iran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Also on the same line as my distinguished colleague from Japan was indicating, I do thoroughly appreciate what my dearest brother, Ambassador Reza Bashir, is highlighting. I'm just going to take him back to UNIA 2, that he very much remembers the very same process we went through, and at the end we had to opt for the chair summary. And because we have to be appreciative of the fact that the atmosphere is a negotiating atmosphere. And we can, having got even a limited number of 5 to even maximum of 10 draft resolutions being negotiated over, but the delegations are all under the same kind of atmosphere. When it comes to even talking about any aspirational outcome document, which would not really be binding to any form of extent, just it would be of recommending nature, then the same kind of atmosphere as it did prolonged the sessions of UNIA 2. Ultimately, we had to settle for chair summary as opposed to any form of draft declaration that we graciously looking forward to. That would have to be very much highlighting the fact that people who'd be following or who'd be contributing to this draft declaration or whatever ultimately may be called, a communique or a statement or whatever, that it is appropriately and legally termed, we'd have to ensure that the extent of its coverage is, as you indicated, just giving direction. It's not going to be constituting any form of words and here and there negotiated over. Otherwise, within the very first 3 days, and the maximum of 3 days that we have available to ourselves, we are likely to face. I'm just giving a word of warning, whilst you very well remember that my delegation stands very much constructive and in support of such moves to converge the views so that we can move forward with a forward-looking, and I stand very much in support of you, my dear brother Reza. Thank you.
Thank you, Iran. We now have a request from Singapore.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for not being able to take the floor just now. But this is a good time for me to say that I hear the words, the views expressed by Japan, by Iran, the difference between a declaration and a joint statement. But Singapore's view is that a chair's statement or a chair's summary would not show the collective commitment of member states to achieve certain goals. So we prefer a declaration. And in that regards, I also hear from Ambassador Tara about aspirational. We think that it should be more than just aspirational. It should be concise, understandable, action-oriented and meaningful. It should also be something that can demonstrate the difference that UNIA or UN environment can make to people's everyday lives. And it should be appealing and attractive to the people at large. One more point I want to make is that, as I mentioned in my previous interventions, Singapore is of the view that in addition to addressing domestic sources of pollution, UNIA 3 should also, the declaration for UNIA 3 should also cover transboundary forms of pollution, especially with regards to the need for intergovernmental cooperation. And in this point, I'd like to underscore that multilateral forums like the UNIA can play a pertinent role in helping to draw focus, strengthen cooperation, and in turn address pollution in its transboundary form. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
His Excellency Ambassador Reza Tara would like to have a word, please.
I'm very sorry for, being overly aspirational. So I'll eschew the aspiration this time. I just want to, pose a general question. A bit of a sense that I've gathered from a couple of interventions and then also what Singapore has said. So it appears, and I don't presume to, have read the minds of all the delegates, but it appears that there is a preference for avoiding kind of, the vague elements in the sense that like paragraph 1, 3, and 5, I think have been pointed out. And then taking a cue from what Singapore has said, concise and action-oriented. Now, the thought that I want to leave with you is that would it be better if we, let's say, drop certain paragraphs, and then in the latter part, after paragraph 5, the bullet points that you see, if we can kind of, make them more concise rather than the obvious explanation. If you look at it right now. So, for example, the first one says supporting the development, collation, and use of reliable scientific data. Technically, it can end with that because the latter part is not really adding much value. This way, at least the document will be more concise. It's just a thought. You can reflect more on that, but probably it can serve as a reference point in the subsequent negotiations. that rather than having, because technically right now in every second paragraph there are different possibilities. If it doesn't happen, then conduct research and whatever, and then it will beg the question, who will do the research and then who will pay for it and so on and so forth. So maybe if we can just say that do this, and then obviously we have to keep in mind the different levels of development and all that. You cannot expect a country from the south to be, as tech savvy as certain countries in the Western Hemisphere, although we are all suffering from pollution, to varying degrees. Thank you very much.
If there are no other interventions, then although I would not like to hand over the chair before my time ends, but any interventions? We still have about 35 minutes to go before the scheduled agenda item 9. People want to take an early break, maybe? Would you like to invite the chair back?
Yes.
Invite the chair back so that we can move on to agenda item number 9.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for taking care of the agenda. You could have continued until the end. But thank you for distinguished delegates. We now come to agenda item 9. And that's discussion regarding institutional arrangement for the Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific. And I would like to direct your attention to the note on institutional arrangement for the Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific and open the floor for comment. Does any delegate wish to speak on the statement? This is the floor is open. Mr. Andy. Their names are there. So, Mr. Stella, Mr. Andy. But you just check whether they need time or is everything okay. I hope that everyone is aware of the document that we are referring to on agenda item 9, and that's UNIP/AB ENV Forum bracket 2/5. And if delegates wish to make a statement, the floor is open. Otherwise, we can move on. Okay, I think we'll just have to move on. And I ask that should you have any further comment or suggestion, observation, question, or anything relating to that document, please feel free to contact the two gentlemen on my right, Mr. Stedtler Trenguo and Mr. Andy Rain. They are from the legal office of the UN Environment.
Thank you. That's it.
That's it?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Move on.
Yeah, so basically we are finished. That already agreed, and so we will resume at 4:15.
Okay.
And you say, I understand ESCAP is providing you.
Okay,
report.
thank you. You would just reminded that in the morning we agreed to swap agenda item 11 with agenda item 10. And for agenda item 11, it's for the ESCAP group to present. And they are not here with us right now. They are still working on it and will be with us on or around 4:30.
4:15.
4:15. So until then,
And we come back around 4:45. So, and then 4:45. So we resume at 4:45.
so we will resume with our session at 4:45 when ESCAP people are prepared to present to us. And then we will take you through agenda item 10 from 4:45 onwards.
And I can also tell that the Secretariat is preparing the draft report of this meeting. It will be circulated to head of the delegation.
And while we're breaking, the Secretariat will be preparing the draft report for our meeting today, and we'll be tabling that in when we go through agenda item 10. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I think we go for a break.
First you tell we are uploading. Second you said keep in the business card. This is the previous.
Can I ask you something? This has nothing to do with the Ministerial Summit. I have a publication that needs a nice cover. And I have a design in InDesign. Do you use InDesign? Excellent, because basically what we need to do is change the photo and change the text, but there's already the InDesign file. Can we talk about that next week? Thank you. That's all I need to know, but I will come and talk to you next week. Sure. Great.
need your help later. Because my mic may be stuck with my I need to edit this video. Can I use your computer? Or well, after all of this session. If I get back to the result, you will give it back to me. So everything is shut down. Essentially, all I want to do is just cut and then put that logo. Oh, but I thought you were give me a call on. Oh, it's not on the. Could it be about it's not on the. It's not on the desktop. Then the other thing I can do is. I'll take it back to the office and then come back because the camera is on. You're not using it. Because my reporting session is at 4:50. I thought we go back to the office. Come back. Without like micros. Did you mind Janice when you looked at video the one building? No, you didn't like Janice because that area is quite. Then I'll just tell Janet we can pull them aside to something. Otherwise, I have a condenser now, it's not so interesting. But I think it's maybe better just with micros.
So let me check as a I'm not sure.
I have the same one.
So
It's like a thing. That's the one that I have. That's the issue.
I'm not sure because so that you have to repeat it and not to get off the day.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, kindly be advised that we will resume here at 4:15 on agenda item 11, adoption of the report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development. And this report is also available online on the summit website under Documents, agenda item 11. Thank you.
Because it came out earlier. because we uploaded it after. So what do they need the Hi Jake, how can I help you? Congratulations in advance. Halfway done? Yeah, sorry, 80% done, but let's see how it goes. I do that very fast after surgery. No, please, just tell me, but you're disprinting here. Yeah. Hi sir, Jake from the Philippines. Nice to meet you. So we said 3 for 2. Both sides or? Let's wait. Yeah. We like this plastic filter. Well, I refill them. Zane, tell me. Nothing important. They just really need the power. Especially the one on media reservations. Oh, okay. For unit things, you have to support. Sorry. The things of today, it's unit, and you have to did you meet Kay from unit? Oh, for the Philippines. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think she's seated there, so you can ask her. Okay. Because, I'm sorry, I don't have any documents from the union. All right. Okay. Thanks. Two friends. Yeah. I'm wondering what we should do to have a document for the next 2 days. Oh, sorry, this was missing. I think it was give it to me.
I mean, I can't believe that I'm having stress for not having paper.
Don't worry. Can I leave the wicket and there you go.
room too, no?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, kindly be advised that we will resume here at 4:15 to discuss Agenda Item 11, the adoption of the report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific. You will also find this report on the summit website under Documents, Agenda Item 11. Thank you.
You are going to be here until what time today? So also after the adoption. Okay, that's clarity. Actually from this 5 to 6 are coming to me because I'm writing from 4:45 to so I won't be able to edit it. I will do it. So make no sense to me. I'll drop the camera. I'll just take it from here. Yeah, when I'm there. Wherever you are. Really serious and official.
No, I'm dressing down.
Dressing down as the day progresses.
The day progresses. I'm gonna end up in a tank top here.
No. We'll get it.
How are you?
I wanna go home. Thursday we have. In the afternoon,
What time are we, like 4:15?
yes.
The adoption of the So like we're once we're once moving it to yes.
Yes.
This is for yeah, I will email it.
Yes. We'll go there because they have free lunch. Well, if we don't go there, they may waste food. But we don't want to. Good. Say no to food waste.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and turn off your phones. We will begin shortly.
I hope so. Here we go. Okay, see you later.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats now and turn off your phones. We will begin.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are now considering Agenda Item 11, adoption of the report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific. The document pertinent to this agenda item is, as indicated in the annotated agenda, draft report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific, E/ESCAP /MCED 7/CRP1. This document is before us now for adoption. The report includes 3 sections. Section 1 on matters calling for action by the conference or brought to its attention includes the recommendation to adopt the text of the draft ministerial declaration as decided yesterday under Agenda Item 4. Section 2 reports on the proceedings and is based on the actual statements made during the meeting. And Section 3 provides details on the organizational setting of the meeting. Should there be any factual corrections on the spelling of names, titles, etc., please contact the Secretariat at the end of the session. I will now open the floor to the senior officials, and I say again, this is just for the senior officials, for comments on the draft report. Do we have any comments from senior officials on the draft report? I recognize a distinguished delegate from Russia.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Chairperson. I would like to draw your attention to a number of provisions of the draft report of the senior officials. First and foremost, I would like to draw your attention to page 2 Clause 5, Paragraph 5, Line 4. In particular, we are talking here about the natural and climate-induced disasters. We do have a question. Climate-induced disasters. Are they unnatural disasters? It seems to us that it's not quite correct to phrase it this way. To single out specific aspects of natural disasters. Therefore, we would like to put forward to strike the words and climate-induced disaster and climate-induced. We would like to delete and climate-induced. Since the term and concept natural disasters covers the concept of climate-induced disasters. This is my first point. I do have a number of other arguments, but I would like to hear your feedback and the reaction of other colleagues to my proposal.
Do we have any other comments from the floor? As we see no other comments, could we give the floor back to Russia to continue, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. But before we go on, it might be better to understand the proposal, which was made by the Russian delegation. Has it been adopted or not?
Yes, Russia, we have taken note.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I'm not talking about the proposal made by the Russian delegation and taking note. We have made a specific textual proposal. And of course, that's a prerogative of any member country and officials to adopt it or not adopt it. So we'd like to be quite clear. The proposal which we've just made, is it adopted or not? If it's adopted, then we could go on to the next stage. But if it's not accepted, we should understand it's not accepted, not adopted, and have an explanation, make an explanation. But we want to be clear that we're working in an organized way.
Thank you, Russia. I had opened the floor to other comments from the other delegates, and I see Iran had put their hand up to speak. After we have taken comments from everybody that wishes to speak, then we will make a decision. I give the floor now to Iran.
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you.
I give the floor to Iran, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the absence of the panelists themselves, I just seem to recall my understanding of the presentation that I share with my distinguished colleague from Russian Federation that may clarify the ambiguity that is standing out at this stage. It was the issue of highlighting the fact that climate-induced disasters are as a result of anthropogenic sources of emissions of greenhouse gases, and versus anthropogenic versus natural is to further complement, whilst I totally appreciate the fact that on the other hand, it may have been trying to categorize the floods, earthquakes as natural, and when it comes to other such weather, extreme weather-driven events as to climate-induced disasters, such as the tsunamis or as such, the weather-driven or the typhoons or the hurricanes that we are experiencing every now and then on different parts of the world. So this is the kind of differentiation that I remember that the distinguished panelist was trying to highlight, whilst I feel that it is not directly making reference to anything induced by the climate change itself on its own entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Iran. Do we have any objections from any other delegates objecting to Russia's comment? They are proposing to amend Clause 5, Paragraph 5, Line 4, and they would like to strike out the words climate-induced disasters. Sorry, just climate-induced. So it will read natural disasters and not natural and climate-induced disasters. So do we have any objections to that? I see Korea has put your flag up. You have the floor, Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the first line, I do not object to the proposed change in the text, but I would like to add one more, two more words, actually, so that the fourth line in paragraph 5 will read, resilience of local communities to natural disasters, including extreme weather events. That's what I would like to add, also incorporating the intervention made by distinguished delegate from Iran. Thank you.
Okay, so we have two things here. Russia has proposed that we strike out the words climate-induced, and we have no objections to that. So that will be struck. And now we have Korea asking to add, after the word disasters, to add including extreme effects of weather. Extreme weather effects.
Including, I'm sorry, may I take the floor?
Yes, please.
Thank you. At the end of the disasters, including extreme weather events. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any objections to this proposal? I see Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation doesn't have the specific objection or support to the any of the proposal made, because the this section of the is a kind of description or summary of the discussion during the session of the conference. So if we engage in the redrafting, the wording, changing wording here and there of the what was said during the meeting, I think we can't finish our discussion on that. And if the summary or description by the Secretariat is incorrect, of course we have to rectify that. But otherwise, if the delegation expresses view on certain viewpoint expressed I think we are engaging in different exercise here. So while I don't have major objection or the amendment just made, but I just want to caution that we should not go into the drafting exercise just to reflect view of the one or some particular country's viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I agree with your comments, and I hope that the distinguished delegates can also understand where you're coming from. This has been discussed thoroughly, and we are here to adopt. So I hope there aren't going to be too many more changes. As we stand at the moment, if we go back to para 5, line 4, it now reads, resilience of local communities to natural disasters, including extreme weather events. Stop. Did I see any objections to this change, to this proposal? I see none. So once more, I will read that again. The line will read, resilience of local communities to natural disasters, including extreme weather events, full stop. This is so adopted. Thank you. Do we have any other comments from any other delegates? Thank you, Russia.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your explanation, clarification. Are we talking about comments to the whole of the draft report?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In that case, with your permission, I would like to draw the attention of my distinguished colleagues to page 3, paragraph 9, lines 4 and 5, which read as follows.
Application of the principles of the green economy.
We propose to reformulate this phrase as follows.
Promotion of green economy. Я повторяю для удобства.
I'll repeat that for the convenience of all my distinguished colleagues.
Вместо слов
Instead of the words through the application of the principles of green economy, we propose the wording
promotion of green economy.
Thank you, Russia. Do I have any objections to this proposal? I see no objections. Sorry, I see Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure whether the word and resource efficiency stays there, because resource efficiency, as we know, was one of the major themes of the ESCAP meeting here today and from yesterday. And I would like to see support the retaining of the resource efficiency there. Thank you.
Thank you, Korea. I don't think that that was part of the proposed change. The only change was that it would read, if I start from the beginning of that line, as it is now, it reads, protection of the environment through the application of the principles of green economy and resource efficiency was recognized. The proposal is that it reads, protection of the environment through the promotion of green economy and resource efficiency was recognized. So we have no objections to this change. It is adopted. Thank you, Russia.
Благодарю вас, госпожа.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chairperson. I highly value your consistency and guided by your instructions, I would like to make a comment and put forward another amendment vis-à-vis this para, which would pertain line 6 to line 6. Line 6 reads, as of right now, we suggest to delete the term équi and to substitute it by the term vital, had a vital role.
Objections to this proposal? Russia is proposing that the line reads, multi-stakeholder engagement had a vital role in the implementation of the SDGs. As it reads now, it says multi-stakeholder engagement had a key role. So we're replacing the word key with vital. Do we have any objections? I see none. That change will be adopted. Do we have any other comments from any other delegation? Yes, Russia.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chairperson. As of right now, I would like to draw your attention to page 4, para 20, line 3, which reads as of right now, we suggest, in the same spirit as in the previous paragraph, we have transformed the phrase vis-à-vis the green economy. We would like to consistently transform this phrase in this paragraph as well. Thus, this line would read as follows. Line would read as follows.
Objections to this proposal? Yes, Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to be one of some countries, but before the first, I would like to add and resource efficiency. Thank you.
Okay, so now what we are saying is that it would be supporting a collective paradigm shift, including inter alia, green economy, and, sorry, what was that, Korea?
Promotion of green economy and resource efficiency.
And resource efficiency. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I note that in the paragraph 17, the following member and the system member made a statement but it does not include, sorry to say that, Republic of Korea. So if the Republic of Korea wants to put emphasis on the resource efficiency element, that delegation should have made a statement in this context. So if there's no reference to the resource efficiency in the under the addenda item 3 by any of the delegation, maybe we shouldn't do the rewriting of the what was not said. So my delegation is cautioned against adding the resource efficiency. Thank you.
In Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies for taking the floor again and again. Two of the words that I heard quite often throughout the meeting yesterday and today is the resource efficiency. My country was not part of that part of the country. I mean, as mentioned in paragraph 17, but that was the language that I heard quite often throughout the meeting yesterday. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, delegates, if we could take these one at a time then. The Russian delegation had proposed that this sentence read, supporting a collective paradigm shift, including inter alia green economy. Inter alia promoting. Okay, I'll read that again. Supporting a collective paradigm shift, including inter alia promoting green economy. Do we have any objections to that change? I see none. That will be adopted. Following that, we had Korea ask if we could add at the end of that, after green economy and resource efficiency. We have an objection from Japan. Yes, Japan.
No, I mean, this is not the objection to the proposal, against the proposal by the Republic of Korea. I think I should like to ask the Secretariat whether this resource efficiency was mentioned during the session. If that is the case, I mean, I have no objection in terms of substance and procedure. But if not, maybe I would continue to caution. And if there's a strong will of the member of the committee to allow the Republic of Korea to put the resource efficiency, my delegation is not in a position to block that. So, but as a matter of principle, I just want to raise a flag to point it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I would like now to hand the floor to the Secretariat for an explanation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is true that the word resource efficiency was mentioned many times during the sessions. The Secretariat can go back to the statements that they were given to this session and confirm if the word resource efficiency has been mentioned. So our proposal would be to put the word resource efficiency in brackets, and then if the Secretariat confirm, we can keep it. Otherwise, we will not be a factual thing to include it.
Okay, do we have any objections to that proposal by the Secretariat? I see none. It is adopted. Do we have any other comments from the delegation? Thank you, Russia.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our delegation has no intention of occupying a lonely block. We just have one proposal, and it's about one specific question. In the concluding comments we have, there is a proposal on paragraph 22. Line 7. Like in the earlier cases where there were issues of the green economy, we propose to change the wording, which now reads as follows.
Application of the principles of the green economy. Мы предлагаем
We suggest to change this wording as follows.
the promotion of ideas of green economy, я повторю, in which promotion of the green economy, и дальше текст остается без.
And the rest of the text would remain unchanged.
Благодарю вас.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Russia. So what Russia is proposing is that it will read, cautioned against a scenario in which the promotion of the green economy, as opposed to the wide application of the principles of green economy. Do we have any objections to this change? I see none. It is adopted. Do we have any other comments from the delegation? Okay, thank you, distinguished delegates. We have completed our consideration of the report. Are there any senior officials that have any further comments at this time? As I see none, I propose that the report is adopted with the amendments suggested and conveyed to the ministerial segment on Thursday, 7 September, as per agenda item 14B of the annotated agenda. It is my honor to announce thus that the report has been adopted. Distinguished delegates, I would like to just repeat that should there be any factual corrections on the spelling of names or titles, etc., participants are asked to please contact the Secretariat at the end of the session. I will now open the floor for country and stakeholder statements for agenda item 11, adoption of the report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development in the Asia and Pacific. I will first open the floor to statements from member and associate member governments. Once all country statements have been made, I will invite statements from intergovernmental bodies, after which I will open the floor to representatives of UN bodies and specialized agencies, and finally to designated representatives of civil society, major groups, and other stakeholders. To begin, I would now like to open the floor for statements and views from governments. I see none. Thank you. I will now invite statements from intergovernmental bodies. I see none. I will now open the floor to UN bodies and specialized agencies. I see none. We will now open the floor to other stakeholders. We have the Center for Environment Concerns. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I speak in behalf of the Center for Environmental Concerns Philippines and the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism. We welcome the acknowledgement of civil society voices in the report, particularly on the emphasis for development justice. However, there remain some concerns, in particular on green economy. From Rio Plus 20, civil society groups remain to emphasize that green economy is greenwashing of the corporate capture of people's natural resources. While green economy acknowledges the need for sustainable and environment-friendly interventions, it does not address the corporate control and the unequal access to the world's resources. We strongly oppose the recognition of green economy principles as solution to pollution and resource use in the region. We also want to bring attention to the recommendation on the promotion of public-private partnerships. As in our countries in the South, this is being done without genuine public consultations and oftentimes at the pursuit of profit between the corrupt government offices and big businessmen. PPPs can be observed in coastal conversions and reclamations, large-scale infrastructures, as well as urban and rural commercial developments, which does not just contribute to people's displacements, but also degradation and destruction of existing local ecosystems and biodiversity. We also want to reiterate that the discussions and report does not recognize the role of the people and their communities in the Partnership for Development. The polluter pays and corporate accountability principle is also still missing, as well as the principle of intergeneration equity. The report also fails to recognize other pollution sources such as genetic modification technologies, extractives, as well as militarism. We also heard a lot about technology, but not about access and control of peoples to these technologies, and the recognition of indigenous knowledge and innovations. We would also like to demand for participatory assessment of available and the new technologies in the region. Lastly, we demand for just transition and inclusive participation from all stakeholders, particularly the grassroots and marginalized communities who are facing the brunt of pollution and inaccess to resources in their daily lives in forms of disasters, loss of livelihood, extreme hunger and poverty, and continuing dispossession of their resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Centre for Environment Concerns. As we have no other speakers, I would now like to call on the MC to make any announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to kindly remind everyone that tonight, the Carnegie Climate Geoengineering Governance Initiative, C2G2, warmly welcomes everyone to join them in an informal dinner reception to learn about the latest thinking on climate geoengineering. The dinner will take place after the end of the proceedings today or from 5:30 p.m. in the reception hall on the ground floor. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. That brings us now to the end of our session today, and I would like to thank you all very much for a very interesting session. Special thanks to Russia, Iran, Japan, and Korea for all your input. I thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please do not leave the room. Kindly remain seated. The next segment will continue shortly with agenda item 10, adoption of the draft outcomes of the second forum of ministers and environment authorities of Asia Pacific. Thank you.
Jonathan just told me that the 50 copies from Meta gave me an old version.
Yeah, these are new ones.
These are new ones.
Yes.
Okay, so I should give them to you.
Subato is over there. So with checker.
I guess that counts. I would be doing this. Using my other handout. Why did everything okay? Sorry?
Yeah, come. Those are not there, don't Which one? No, if it is adopted, it will go.
Subrato, can I have a copy of the report?
No, chair. Marco.
Sorry, just
No, if you can just say hello, thank you. If he wants, if not, just. Just say it's an honor for me to be here. That's it. Does he want to talk?
Yeah, you want to say a few words.
I don't think I have the time with him.
Okay, maybe I will do something. I will do something. Anyone is coming, you stand there in the middle. Anyone coming? Yeah.
Yes. Just wondering, do we have an outlet? No. Everything's taken.
No, I got a call. He doesn't come. And then presiding officer will tell them because of that you guys. Thank you very much for your interview. That's all they want. Just a second. There's a instruction to me. Because when presiding officer will be inviting the chair, right? Yes.
Presiding officer.
I took the Stefan. No, all this.
So the chair will remember.
Only morning. He said, I told Kaveh, I told Stefan when I went there, that this is kind of 15 minutes is out. And presiding officer is going. And then Kaveh said, Lord, the one hour is
Is it already out? Can I read the report? Because they're discussing.
Give me a hand, so then I send it.
I'll write it down.
Yeah, and then I send it to.
Okay.
Yeah. Send it forward.
Okay.
Yeah, something like just I give it to Stefan.
Oh, okay. I'll give it. Can I just see it? How long is it?
Just capture. They're very good at it. A lot of statement. Full of statement. Yeah. Still. No, still. Little early. It still is gone. It was going. Then fine. There's a lot of statements. But we covered it. 100% statement. Yeah. You have given everyone? You have given the civil society? Yeah. You have given the civil society? Civil society. But this is just
Yeah.
you have to correct. No, no, I will check. But it's not.
Because here we have the
All chairs.
So we know after what they discuss, we know what they are referring to. Today is just this judgment. There's a delegation from DPE and PRK.
Yes, correct.
She was here.
The lady, she was
alone?
here.
I'm not sure.
I saw her in the morning.
Okay. I think she would be.
Facing here,
Yeah.
the corner.
I think she would be. Who do you know who the liaison officer is for her?
Yeah.
I don't know how long.
At 2.
I saw him.
I don't know where he's now.
Yeah, if you see him, would you mind passing on the message? That I would like to interview.
That you would like to introduce?
Or just ask if the DPRK would have 5 minutes for a quick interview.
Okay.
Regarding their architecture decision. On pollution and just sharing knowledge.
Yeah.
Very generic, simple question, nothing
Sensitive.
sensitive.
Yeah, if I see, I will pass the message. Are you going back to the office? He's at the office.
Could be, but I just get to know. Now is the time that is this ending, by the way, or is there another session?
This is a break.
This is the break.
Yes, in the West End.
Okay.
Your Excellencies, I think we better start before we lose some of our members. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we are now resuming with the consideration of Agenda Item 10. I believe we have dealt with Agenda Item 11 just then. The report, a draft senior officials meeting report, has been circulated. And shortly we will be asking for your endorsement. We'll give you a minute to go through it quickly.
So give 5 minutes. Copy, you should stand behind when you are coming like Pakistan. Okay, you should go behind. When you are coming, you keep the copy here. Just give it. Can you go and give it to Pakistan? Yes. Now we're not changing agenda item. So give it to Pakistan. That's it. Fine. You keep it. If somebody is asking, just keep and watch. Yes. Okay. We don't have any changes now. This is the last item. So no problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a living document, so we'll improve on it as we move on. But let me invite senior officials, if you have any comment, observation, remarks on the report, other than the date on top of right-hand corner that the Secretariat will correct. Are there any remarks? I invite Japan to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Japan has 2 comments on the report. First, the page 8, agenda item 8A, Japan's comment has not been reflected in the report, and we'd like to ask the Secretariat to include Japan's comment as follows. Japan requested necessary revision in paragraph 15, section 1 and 2, in order to ensure that countries are able to set on air quality guidelines and standards using WHO air quality guidelines as reference. And second, on the page 11, the paragraph 28, second bullet read as follows. Some noted the declaration was intensive to agree on, and Japan would like to propose to add, rather than chair's summary, after the word declaration. Thank you, Chair.
We have taken note of that. Secretariat will make necessary amendments. May I invite China?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 procedures issues. One is with regard to the agenda item with the agenda item 8B, the draft resolutions. My delegation noticed that there are several draft resolutions listed here, and we have seen some of them, but there might be something we didn't see. Yes, we have seen, we have saw that the draft resolution on marine litter proposed by Norway. We also saw that draft resolution on eliminating exposed to lead paints. But we didn't see anything on that concept note on resolution on environment and health nexus. And also, we didn't see draft resolution to improve air quality in cities. I would like to get the clarification from Secretariat. This is one.
Thank you, China. Secretary will have a look into that and make appropriate.
If you allow me, Mr. Chair, I'd like to continue.
To comment at this stage.
So, Excellency Chair, with your permission, the document that we have uploaded in the Asia Pacific website, there are 4 resolutions that was circulated, that was submitted to our headquarters in the Secretariat.
and they have circulated to all the member states those 4 resolutions that they received. And we just compiled those, and also we submitted 6 weeks prior all the 4 resolutions, and the 5th one has come 3-4 days before. That was also circulated to all the member states. So all the 4 resolutions we are talking about in the report, that was circulated to all the member states some time back, and by our secretariat in Nairobi to all the member states, and we just compiled it, and we also uploaded it in our ministerial website 6 weeks prior to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saprata. China, would you like to?
Yes, I would like to check internally with my colleagues. Second issue is about the agenda item 9. It's about the institutional arrangement for the Forum of Ministers and the Environment Authorities for Asia Pacific. According to our agenda procedures, we hope that it will be something on the agenda, introduction by the Secretariat. But in fact, there's no explanations from the Secretariat. And the chair asked for comments. So it was so in a rush that my delegation didn't have opportunities to express our concerns. So I just want to point out this fact. Thank you.
Noted. Any further comment from the floor? China, third opportunity.
Actually, our concerns or our statement is ready. If possible, we'd like to prepare for the Secretariat. This is the procedures issue. If you allow me, I would like to also mention one amendment to the text of the draft report.
Yes, please refer to which page and paragraph, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's in paragraph, in page 11, agenda item 8, paragraph 28. The sub-paragraph, the first one, first sub-paragraph. Some common environmental and development policy principles, the original text could be included in such as those related to. My suggestion is to replace the word could by should. Thank you.
Secretariat has no problem with that, honorable member from China. Thank you for that. Noted. Any further comment from the floor from our senior officials? Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at the report. Paragraph 27 contains something that Singapore said, but I don't recall saying it under the draft resolution to improve air quality in cities. And this is referring to the sentence, paragraph 27, line 6. The transboundary nature of air pollution calls for a coordinated approach by governments. I think this is lifted from what I said, but I did not mean it to come under this resolution. And the other one is I mentioned something along that lines too for the draft declaration, but it's not included in paragraph 28.
We'll have a look at that, Singapore, but thank you for raising those issues. Any last comment? Colleague from Tonga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment is just to It's not a comment, it's a request to, on the overview one, that meeting was attended by countries list, that my country is not listed on the name of the countries. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tonga. Apology, we overlooked that, and Secretariat will include Tonga in the report. We invite the Republic of Korea to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just minor suggestion to correct to streamline the paragraph. It is on paragraph 28 on page 11. Under the chapeau text, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's regarding my intervention is regarding sixth paragraph, sixth split, and seventh split, both talking about the first paragraph of the draft declaration. And my suggestion, although I mentioned the paragraph, the bullet point, the sixth bullet point there, my suggestion is to add the sixth and seventh bullet points together, since they are talking about first paragraph only. I'll leave it to the Secretariat to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Korea will make necessary adjustments. Any further comment? May I have the permission to endorse the draft meeting report for the senior officials meeting? With the comment incorporated? Accordingly, we will submit the senior official report together with the chair's summary for adoption by the ministers under the agenda item 16. Okay. Iran, any final?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just on page 5, paragraph 15, on strengthening the environmental cooperation, although it says in the one line before the last, among others, but I think the issue of cooperation for water and water pollution was also mentioned. I would suggest that the issue of water and water pollution is also to be included, as it is very appropriately addressed. Thank you very much.
Making a note of that, and Secretariat will include it as they finalize our report. And with that, it has been a very, very long day. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge with sincere appreciation your participation and your excellent cooperation and fruitful deliberation for today. I believe, despite being a long day, it has been a very successful and productive session, has been interactive and participatory. Let me thank all the speakers that have presented for us today and have shared your technical expertise and experiences with us. Let me also acknowledge and thank all the head of delegations and officials for your intervention, your country statement, our civil society, special acknowledgement of our civil society and your constructive input to our meeting today. I have seen your report, which will be tabled in ministerial meeting coming up in the next 2 days, and will be on its way, hopefully, to UNEA. Let me also thank the 2 vice chairs for today. I thank Dr. Suprata and the Secretariat for all your secretarial support. and all the other support staff that we have here. I thank you very much for all your contribution to today's deliberation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to officially close the senior official segment of the Second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authority of Asia Pacific and invite our MC to make any final announcement. Having no further announcement, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Yes, C2G2 the ESCAP. Yes, it's a public call. I emailed saying that it's break for this number. We just finished the meeting, by the way. Yes, yes, finished. It's okay. I will have a look. Okay, now let me see if I can find it on the map. Oh, okay. I will have a look. If they are still good there, I will bring them back to the office.
Let's give me a call. I'll arrange a draw.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Struggling but managing.
Yeah, and Gibraltar looking forward to have the revision of the draft because there's so many significant, especially the one procedures issue raised by the
China.
And the suggestion by
Right. That's right.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. When we do,
And Tonga was missing from the list.
yeah, it's your neighbor. Yeah.
Blaming.
Yeah, of course, you're the chair and you're from the.
The drafted report that I published is updated. I received it. Oh, finished. Will you come tomorrow?
Sorry?
Will you come tomorrow?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Will you?
Yeah, of course. See you tomorrow.
But you're not anyway.
Yeah, in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Yes. You will be here until Friday? Friday?
Yes.
Ah, okay. See you.
See you.
I have no idea. Back on the wing, so you got to recycle. This. We're taking notes. Oh,